After 28 years, the critically acclaimed story, Batman the Killing Joke, is finally getting an animated adaptation. Fans everywhere were overjoyed when it was announced that this would be the first DC original animated movie to have an R rating. However, does the film even need an R rating? Well, the answer may seem simple enough given the source material. Let's take a closer look and find out if the R rating is what will make this a great adaptation, or if the film's rating will end up damaging its success. The first thing we have to take a look at is the source material, and see what the film has to work with. I don't really need to give a spoiler warning since, come on, everyone knows the story of The Killing Joke, but I'll be kind enough to give one anyways, so spoilers for The Killing Joke from here on out. The Killing Joke serves as a possible, and the most widely accepted origin story for the Joker. It also has the Joker paralyzing Barbara Gordon and kidnapping Commissioner Gordon in an effort to prove that all it takes is one bad day for anyone to turn into a lunatic like him. It's a very dark story that is filled with a lot of implications and explores a variety of themes. At a glance, it would seem only logical that the film's adaptation would have to be rated R because of how dark the original story is, but there are a lot of factors that need to be taken into consideration. Let's break down the factors that make a rated R film according to the Motion Picture Association of America, or the MPAA, and see how the original comic fits into each of the 5 categories. First, there's violence. There isn't much violence in The Killing Joke other than the Joker shooting Barbara Gordon and the end fight between Batman and the Joker. The violence isn't that heavy, and there is a surprisingly small amount of blood throughout the comic. To compare, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns featured several fight scenes that were much more violent than any of the fights in The Killing Joke, especially the final fight between Batman and the Joker at the carnival in The Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns managed to get a PG-13 rating when it was animated despite these violent scenes, so we can assume that it won't be rated R because of violence. Next up is language. In general, all it takes is 2 or more uses of the F word and a film will be rated R. Throughout The Killing Joke, the most profanity that is used is a few instances of the words ass, damn, and hell. None of these words would be enough for the film to be rated R due to the language, so we can assume that language is out as well. The next category is substance abuse, and there aren't any uses or any mentions of drugs or alcohol in the comic, so it can safely be said that substance abuse is not a factor in the R rating as well. Nudity is the next category, and this is the first one that has a major impact in the comic. Commissioner Gordon is naked throughout most of the comic, and we also see images taken of an unconscious and naked Barbara Gordon. Let's look closely at what the MPAA deems as suitable nudity without an R rating before jumping to any conclusions about this throughout the movie though. According to the MPAA, quote, nudity in a PG-13 rated motion picture generally will not be sexually orientated or sexually explicit. The nudity shown in The Killing Joke is neither sexually orientated nor sexually explicit, and it does not show any of the characters' private areas. Therefore, it would qualify under nudity for a PG-13 movie. Finally, we have sexual content. It is heavily implied in the comic that the Joker raped Barbara Gordon. However, that is only an implication, and not something that is explicitly shown. In order to qualify for an R rating according to the MPAA, sexual content would have to be explicitly shown, which is not the case for The Killing Joke. Now that we've gone through the 5 categories of the MPAA, we can safely say that the comic book version of The Killing Joke doesn't merit an R rating according to the standards by the MPAA. Just to get a better idea of what a PG-13 Killing Joke film would be like, let's compare it to some of the other DC original animated films, since despite being rated PG-13, they've proven time and time again that they can push the boundaries of what is PG-13 suitable. As previously mentioned, The Dark Knight Returns features much more violence than The Killing Joke, and Assault on Arkham also has heavy violence, seeing as how one of the first few scenes has Harley Quinn biting someone's ear off. Assault on Arkham also has a lot of nudity that actually is shown in a sexual matter. There is a barely off-screen sex scene between Harley Quinn and Deadshot in that film. Both of these films have very heavy dialogue, and there are some scenes of alcohol use in these films. The Flashpoint Paradox also features a lot of violence. There are beheadings, children being killed, and there's even a very gruesome scene where someone gets shot through the head and you can see pieces of their brain sticking out afterwards. Justice League Gods and Monsters had a fair share of dark scenes as well, and that was a pretty dark story considering its PG-13 rating. Taking all of this into consideration, it would seem much more likely that at least one of those films would be the one to get the R rating, yet all of them are PG-13. These films managed to push the boundaries of what a PG-13 film is able to get away with. And if they can, then Killing Joke can definitely get away with a PG-13 rating and still have its dark source material intact. One last thing I'd like to note, in order to prove that the film doesn't need an R rating, is that in 1988, when the comic was first released, there were fairly strict regulations on what could and could not be published and sold in accordance with the Comic Code Authority, or the CCA, yet Killing Joke managed to make it past the regulations. The comic was also sold as being suggested for mature readers, but it was not intended nor targeted towards mature readers. At this point, you might be asking yourself, okay, so you're proving The Killing Joke doesn't be rated R. So what? Does it really matter if The Killing Joke's gonna be rated R? And to that I say, yes, it does matter. What makes The Killing Joke a great story, and what made it so memorable, isn't the fact that it's incredibly violent, or overly adult. It's the themes that the comic explores, and the message that it has. The Killing Joke is a look into both Batman and the Joker. It explores how the two of them are so similar, yet so different. They both had one bad day, and they were both met with some type of random injustice, but how they respond to it is what made the difference in their lives. Batman took his one bad day and used it to fuel his fight against crime. He doesn't want anyone to have to go through what he did. On the other hand, the Joker took his one bad day as a sign that life was simply one messed up joke. And if that's the case, all he should do is laugh along and enjoy the cruel joke that is life. Barbara Gordon getting shot and Commissioner Gordon being tortured were impactful not because of the fact that they were so dark, but because of the effect it had on the characters. Commissioner Gordon showed that despite everything the Joker threw at him and everything he suffered through, he kept his morals. In the end, he wanted the Joker brought in by the books. He wanted to prove that their way works as well. The Killing Joke is a story best told through its subtext and its implications. Not everything has to be shown or said, because you can tell what's happening with the tone and the atmosphere that's going on. Even at the end, the entire comic is left completely up to interpretation of the reader. The reader gets to decide whether or not Batman killed the Joker at the end. All of the subtext, the subtlety, the interpretations, they all work together to create the atmosphere of this story, and are what made the story so memorable and made it what it has become today. With an R rating though, the film adaptation of The Killing Joke doesn't have to leave anything up to interpretation. It doesn't have to use subtext, it doesn't have to use viewer interpretation, because the R rating gives it the liberty to show what was originally only left up to interpretation. If the film wants to, it can show Barbara Gordon getting raped by the Joker. It can completely and fully show the Commissioner Gordon's torture at the hands of the Joker. It can even show Batman strangling the Joker to his death. Perhaps they can even use the R rating to add in new content that is much more explicit and much more adult than what the source material was originally intended for and what it originally had to offer. Having an R rating could end up doing more harm than good. Everyone thought that having an R rating would help the film become a better adaptation. But what if the R rating makes it a worse adaptation? What if they add in new things, and what if they add in new elements that aren't what was originally intended? What if they change things by not having subtext and not having subtlety? What do you think? Do you think that the film's R rating is going to make it a better adaptation? Or do you think it doesn't need the R rating and it's going to do more harm than good? Share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Either way, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.